Hello and welcome to FPL, mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2020-21 season. My name is Dan, and today, I have got a big one for you today, guys, because I basically compiled a massive list of players that I think are worth having a look at for Game Week 18. So whether you're on a free hit, whether you're making final changes to your team, and maybe you're wildcard in next game week, maybe you're wildcard in this game week, maybe you're not doing any of that, you just want to find some players who are going to be good for this blank game week. This is the place for you. Trust me, guys, I am covering it all. So spend a lot of time on this video. So if you do enjoy what you see today, please do consider liking the video and subscribing. And yeah, hopefully you like what you see today. But without further ado, I think we get started. So what this video will entail is 53 players, yes, 53 FPL players from the 12 teams that are playing in Game Week 18. And basically, if they're not on this list today, then I don't think they're worth considering personally. Now, you might have some different opinions. Maybe you'll have a couple of players you want to add on to this list. Maybe you'd have a couple of players you take off this list. Basically, use this as a very rough guide. But as you guys know, I like to present my information in a pretty accessible, visually appealing way. So there are some graphics and stuff that hopefully help us along the way, but I've basically split the players into 4 categories, and then we're by team as well. But the 4 categories in this particular video are low risk players, so these are solid Game Week 18 must-have options. Medium risk players, which are potential Game Week 18 sleeper options, probably can afford to have quite a few of the medium risk players as well. And then high risk players, these are kind of real risky for Game Week 18. Now, don't pick too many of these guys, that's for sure. Or if you are picking them, at least choose the cheaper ones and put them on your bench. And then finally, the bench options. So your super cheap budget options that should only ever be on your bench. Not worth putting in your first 11, guys. Not worth putting in your first 11, but there could be some nice cheeky budget options there as well. So we're going to go through them all today. And we're going to start off, we're going to go team by team, all 12 teams, all 53 players. Whew, wish me luck, guys. This is going to be a good one. So let's start off with Arsenal. And we've got 7 players from Arsenal. I think worth having a look at. I'm not going to talk a lot about every single player on this list because otherwise this video would take forever, wouldn't it? But Crystal Palace at home for Arsenal, which is a really nice fixture. It's a really good fixture for Arsenal's defence and a really good fixture for Arsenal's attack as well. This is a really, really nice fixture indeed. Arsenal in particular have been looking good defensively pretty much all season, and in particular recently have been looking a bit nicer in attack as well. So the players we're kind of looking at the most are Tierney and Saka. I think those are the 2 big ones. And if you can't afford, Tierney, maybe you can go for a holding, and then after that, it's pretty risky territory. Now, Aubameyang is kind of high risk. I don't know if he's necessarily high risk, high reward. He's very, very expensive. And you've got to think about what other players you can get for that same budget. 11.3 million. A lot of money there. So not sure I would go for that. But Emil Smith-Rowe could be kind of interested. Smith-Rowe. 4.4 million. Could be okay, but mostly on this particular game week, particularly if you're free hitting, you need to pack your team with Game Week 18 playing players. You've got to look really at Tierney and Saka. Those are kind of the priority moves. And then you pick one more from the rest of this list, depending on how risky you want to be, how much money you have to spend. All that kind of things it's got to kind of factor in. My favourites from this list are Tierney, Saka for sure. And then as a little bit of a medium risk there, you could go for Lacazette as well. Those are my top 3 picks there. But obviously, loads to choose from at Arsenal. And you can't say the same for every team this game week, as we will soon find out. So Aston Villa next, up against Spurs at home. Now I should say there has been some pretty nightmarish stuff going on at Villa Park, to be honest, because it turns out a lot of their players, something like over 15 of their players, have unfortunately been diagnosed with coronavirus, or have at least have to isolate because they've been around people with coronavirus. So they've had a real outbreak at their camp, which is kind of thrown into doubt whether they're actually going to be able to play Spurs in Game Week 18. It might actually have to be cancelled. In fact, it's probably more likely that this game is called off than it actually goes ahead. But I do want to speak about them anyway, because nothing's certain yet. But just be aware that there's very likely this game is going to be called off. I know they're playing against Liverpool in the FA Cup, but this game is going to be played by Aston Villa's under-23s, who sort of train separately from the first team. So unfortunately, Aston Villa have to field their under-23s, so the best case scenario from Aston Villa really here is maybe they have to play their under-23s in Game Week 18, which is going to be a very good game for Spurs, but not a very good game for Aston Villa. But Obviously, nothing's been cancelled yet. We don't know absolutely for sure everything, so maybe there's a chance that this game does go ahead, but I kind of doubt it. But just for the sake of, just in case it does go ahead, I'm going to talk about them very, very briefly. So El Ghazi kind of looks like the best option. Medium risk still, because it is against Spurs. It's not a great fixture. Grealish I wouldn't be so keen on just because of his price. I think you can spend your money better elsewhere on players with slightly better fixtures. And then Davies as an excellent bench option, purely because, and he's not going to play, no chance. He gets you 0 points every single game week, but he's the cheapest forward on the game at 4.3 million. So if you're really struggling for budget, maybe your third bench option, your third and final bench option, because try and put a little bit of money on your bench, maybe your final bench option could be Davies there. And you know, very nice 4.3 million option just to free up some funds elsewhere. So that's basically Aston Villa, but I think we move very swiftly on. So Brighton next, and this is looking pretty barren, as you probably might imagine. Man City away. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible fixture. There's no player that I would be looking at from Brighton other than potentially putting Sanchez on your bench. If you really are looking for a backup goalkeeper, you want to make sure you have 2 playing goalkeepers. Sanchez at 4.4 million is a really good price. So if you want a free hit, you want to have a backup goalkeeper in your starting, well, not your starting team, but your full team, your full squad. 4.4 million, you can't really get anyone cheaper who is going to be playing this game. Sanchez is literally the only option, and even if he does play, if City sort of put 4 goals past him, he's going to get 0 points anyway. But I don't know how likely that is to happen. Maybe he gets a couple of saves, you never know. Maybe he only concedes 3 goals or 2 goals only, and then still gets you 1 point at least. So potentially, if you really are going to try and be really stingy on your backup goalkeeper budget, then Sanchez might be the one for you there. Burnley, similarly, quite bare here. Not many players I'd want to pick out from this team, to be honest. Definitely wouldn't go near the defence. Manchester United are a very good attacking team, so I wouldn't touch the defence, really. Midfield, not really much options in Burnley for midfielders anyway. And finally, attack. To be fair, Chris Wood has actually looked pretty good in the last couple of game weeks. His expected stats are more than his actual performances, so we are expecting him to score a few more goals than perhaps he has done recently. And he's actually been relatively creative as well in this Burnley side as well. So one of the more creative players. So actually, in terms of attacking players from Burnley, you can't really look any further than Wood. He is the best option by quite some bit as well. And Manchester United, this is a game at home. And also Manchester United, they're not exactly completely solid in defence. We have seen teams get few goals against them this season. They've been magnificent in attack, don't get me wrong, but there is that possibility that there are going to be goals against Manchester United, and if you're choosing anyone for goals against Manchester United from the Burnley team, and there isn't much really, now I suppose you go for Wood. Like you can see here, I've put it down as high risk. I would not really be recommending this one, but if you really fancy a Burnley player in this game against Manchester United, and honestly I wouldn't blame you if you weren't ignoring this team completely in this game week, then you could go for Wood there. Crystal Palace, and we've actually got 2 options here, which is a little bit more than we've seen on the previous ones. Arsenal away, which is actually probably a slightly tougher game than some people realise for Crystal Palace, but there is still some potential there, isn't there? So Zaha is the obvious option, isn't he, in terms of which players from Crystal Palace do we want. We don't want to touch the Crystal Palace defence. Apart from Zaha, which attacker would you realistically want to go for? I'm not really sure. Even if you wanted to buy someone slightly cheaper, then there's kind of seems like there's better options elsewhere in terms of midfielders you can get. Zaha is kind of the only realistic option at Crystal Palace in terms of their attack. And then if you want to go for a bench option, Mitchell, of course, 3.9 million is a super cheap price. He has managed to get himself back into the Crystal Palace team. He's played the last couple of games, in fact. So for 3.9 million, you might actually have yourself there a guaranteed starter. I don't know about guaranteed, maybe guaranteed is a little bit strong, but you have a potential starter there, which is kind of okay. Not necessarily going to get you a lot of points. I wouldn't be expecting a clean sheet. It could be a 1 or a 2 pointer for Mitchell, but at least you got something. Again, he's the kind of option who could be for your third and final outfield sub. Aside from that, yeah, I probably wouldn't consider him, and you know, Zaha is risky, but if you want to go for him, fair enough. Everton next, and I think there's going to be a couple of sleepers in here because, you know, people aren't really talking too much about Everton in terms of their free hit teams. I'm not seeing a lot of people talk too much about them. So Holgate and Pickford I would say would be the better picks in this Everton side. I do like the look of Holgate's price at 4.8 million. That's pretty good. Wolves not exactly well known for scoring a lot of goals, particularly this season, particularly without Jimenez. It's not ideal for them. Pickford actually not doing too badly recently. He's picked himself up a couple of clean sheets, and in general, Everton do seem to be very much improved defensively. On the attacking side, they've kind of fallen off a little bit, as we all very well know, which is why DCL is a kind of a high risk player for this game week. If you already have him in your team and you're not on a free hit or anything like that, I would absolutely keep Dominic Calvert-Lewin, but I'm not convinced he's going to come out and play Wolves away. Wolves, a pretty good defensive team, and score a few goals or even one goal in an Everton team that have kind of looked a little bit flatter in attack. I do think there's definitely potential for some clean sheets here, which is why I think that Holgate and Pickford could be potential sleepers for you, and Pickford for 4.8 million as well. It's a pretty good price for a goalkeeper, you know, when we're considering some of the other options. This game week is actually one of the cheaper options in terms of goalkeepers, isn't it? Okay, now on to some big boys. We've got Manchester City, and few more options here. A few more options. I say a few more. There is 9. Brighton at home, excellent fixture for Man City. This is a team, if you're on your free hit, you are going to want to be having 3 Man City players. You've got to have 3 Man City players. So it's basically picking from this lot. How do you want to do it? And the first thing you'll probably notice, if you've studied this list extensively, is that there's a lot of high-risk players. And we know that about Manchester City, the whole classic Pep roulette. Some of them are high-risk, high-reward, to be fair. Aguero, Mahrez, even Foden, you'll probably say, if they start, there's potentially quite a few points in there. But you are taking that risk. And if you're on a free hit, your free hit is your differential, and then after that, you kind of just want to have a bunch of players who are guaranteed to start. So maybe you can pick 1 of Aguero, Mahrez, Foden, but if you're picking 3 from the high-risk category, even 3 from the medium and high-risk category, then you might be in a little bit trouble. And I would also say, with Manchester City players this game week, particularly on a free hit, but also in general, a lot of people make the mistake of trying to fit a Man City player into the team based on their budget. I don't think you should really do that. I think you should look at a team like Man City and pick your favourite player and make your budget work for that player. Don't sort of say you've got, I don't know, Zaha in your team, which gives you 7.4 million for a midfielder. That basically means you have to get Phil Foden, or you have to get a Gundogan. Perhaps actually you want a Mahrez, you want a Sterling, but instead you'll sacrifice because you're saying, oh, I can't quite afford it, I'd have to make 2 transfers, something like that. And you make it, you know, you make the player fit your budget. You should really go and just look at this list and pick your favourite players and go for it. Make it happen. Don't cut corners. Cutting corners doesn't work. But of course, if you do actually genuinely fancy one of the high-risk players, then that's absolutely fine. Another thing you probably would have noticed, and I've had a few comments on videos about this already, is that Stefan, the goalkeeper, and the reserve goalkeeper at Manchester City, who has been playing a couple of games recently, do I recommend him in your fantasy team? Well, absolutely not. No, because these Man City spots, they're super valuable. You can only have 3 Man City players, and you want to waste it on a player who, you know, supposed Man City get a clean sheet. That's 6 points maximum for Stefan, because, you know, he's not going to have to make a lot of saves. He's not going to get bonus points because he's not making saves, and the attacking players are going to probably mop up, and maybe some of the defenders, particularly Diaz, Cancelo, they will mop up the bonus points as well. So you've got a 6-point ceiling on a Man City player. When you can pick out of these players, look at the ceilings on these players. KDB's ceiling, sort of 20 points. Diaz, sort of, you know, 10 plus. Cancelo, 10 plus. Sterling, 15 plus. You know, these have players with super, super high ceilings. So go for one of these. Forget about Stefan. Pick some other random team for your goalkeeper, because we want to be focusing on some of these really nice Man City assets. So that's what I would say about that one. So hopefully that is useful. But just go for it here. Just pick your favourite players and stick with them. Manchester United next, and we've got sort of a few more low-risk players here. There's a few more options here. Fernandes and Rashford are kind of the low-risk attacking players, and then Maguire and Aaron and Bissaka, sort of the low-risk defensive players. Now, the risk really comes with the Manchester United defence, is whether they'll actually play. So, for example, Shaw, rotation risk with Alex Telles. I do think Shaw has got the slight advantage there, perhaps. Lindelof, I do think, and I'm sure some people might say, oh, actually, Eric Bailly is perhaps first choice, but Lindelof is back now. Bailly was kind of covering Lindelof while he was injured, although maybe you would say it was actually the other way around. I don't know. I feel like Lindelof is the preferred option though at Manchester United, but some of you may disagree on that one, but I have put him down anyway. He's played every game in which he's been fit for Manchester United, so that's a very good sign indeed. And he also can play at right back as well if they decide not to play Wan-Bissaka in that position. For whatever reason, they want to rest him or whatever. So, yeah, Maguire is probably the top pick for the defenders just because he's so nailed on. So, he's definitely going to play. He's got really good aerial threat. In fact, he's got the most chance of getting attacking returns of any Manchester United defender. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Because in generally speaking, even if we account for, per minutes played, perhaps, someone like Telles, perhaps, maybe, sure, gets better returns per minute played. But in terms of nailed-on defenders who are going to get regular shots in the box, corner headers and all of that, Maguire's your man, really. So perhaps he's the one to go for there. And then aside from that, he's kind of risky. Cavani, super, super risky, for example. Martial, medium risk because he could not play. It could be Cavani that plays. We don't know. So perhaps play it safe on this one, but there are potential risks that you could take with Manchester United as well, if that's kind of the way you want to go. Newcastle next, and I think they're medium risk across the board. I kind of see these as it could work out, it could not work out, because Newcastle are kind of a risky team. They're not exactly well known as being, a particularly strong team this season, are they? But they are playing Sheffield United. Now, some people actually have Sheffield United as the more likely winners. I don't really think that's necessarily going to happen. I think Newcastle are probably going to win this. They've got better football players at the end of the day, and Sheffield United have just been found out this season. I know Newcastle are weak, but Sheffield United kind of have looked like the weaker team this season, and there are some options here. So Wilson is the only attacking option I would go for, full stop. No one else is worth considering in the Newcastle attack. Don't even think about it. Don't try and be smart. Don't try and be clever with Joe Linton. Yes, 1 in 100 times it comes off, but you will look like a fool if you put Joe Linton in your team and you get a solid 1-pointer or a 2-pointer. You really will. But more defensively, actually looks pretty good. So Clark is the most likely to play out of the Newcastle defence. He's kind of got good goal threat as well from corners, sort of headed attempts and stuff like that. He'll get a couple of goals a season. Maybe that happens in this game week. Yedlin looks pretty good for 4.3 million, although he carries slightly more risk for starting, but he probably will start as well. Darlow, he is actually a really good option, but carries a little bit of risk because there's that chance that Dubravka replaces him in goal. But Darlow's done pretty well. He makes a lot of saves. So, I mean, I have a great deal of confidence in him. But if you are picking Darlow, make sure you have a playing backup goalkeeper in there. Sheffield United now, and probably a few more players than you're expected to see here. Now, it's not because I think there's loads and loads of good options. I actually think there's loads and loads of bad options, but there are options nonetheless. These players are players I would think, okay, maybe we could fill up our bench with some Sheffield United players, and I definitely don't think I would be thinking about starting it. But a lot of people, and bookies for example, actually give Sheffield United a higher chance of keeping a clean sheet this game week than Newcastle. I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that, but bookies, odds and all that, some people place a sort of high precedent on that. So in that case, you've got Ramsdale, Basham and Ampadu, all really nice prices. Ampadu, sort of 4.3 million, super, super cheap. The problem is he doesn't play every single match, so he could start, but I don't know, he's real risky of whether he's going to start. So I'd be okay with him on my bench, but no more than that. No way I'd want him as a starting player. He's super risky. Brewster, he just fills a bench slot, maybe gets you 1 point a week, the 1 point bandit, as I like to call him. McGoldrick is kind of an interesting one. Real risky, but apparently there's a good chance of him scoring this game week according to various metrics. These metrics, of course, don't actually take into consideration the quality of the player. However, it's got kind of like XG and stuff. Doesn't really take into account how clinical a player is. And McGoldrick is not a particularly clinical player. So perhaps we can ignore that a little bit. But some stats put McGoldrick as one of the highest chances of grabbing a goal this game week. So if you fancy them against the Newcastle defence for some reason, okay as bench options, but no more than that. Spurs next, and as I said, very good chance this game gets called off. On the other hand, if it isn't called off and Aston Villa have to play the under-23 team that they have, then suddenly this is an incredibly appealing team to pick from. Very small chance that happens, of course, but you never know. Stranger things have happened this season in football. So it's a pretty wacky season. Anything can happen. But yeah, let's talk about Spurs anyway. I know this game could get called off. There's a slim chance that they play Fulham as well next game week. Very, very slim chance that happens. Very, very slim chance they even play Aston Villa, even if they're under 23 teams. But whatever. So we've got Kane and Son. I'm not going to talk about because we know how good they are. Son, I think I slightly prefer because he's a cheaper option. Dyer is probably the preferential option at defence just because there's no rotation risks there. And Reguilon, Aurier possess a little bit more attacking threat, but they're a little bit more expensive and they do carry that reasonable rotation risk. Obviously they've got Doherty at right back and they've got Ben Davies at left back that can easily swap for them, so we don't know, sometimes they have a little bit of rotation there, a little bit risky there. But in general, Aston Villa at full force, then that's kind of how I'd rated these players. So Aston Villa at full force, you know, Kane and Son, okay players to have, a good risk mitigation because a lot of people in non-free hit teams will have these Spurs assets. But who knows what's going to happen? It's really hard to talk specifics about this one, but these are kind of the players I would be looking at if Spurs were to play a game in game week 18. But we'll see about that. And finally, Wolves. Wolves the final team. Neto in midfield you could go for. Size looks okay in defence. Obviously, Everton at home, you know, Everton have not been scoring a lot of goals recently, so maybe there's some potential to go for some defenders here. Fabio Silva as a super high risk, cheap differential. I guess you stick him on your bench. I don't think I would be starting Fabio Silva unless I was really in trouble for budget. Which hopefully, guys, you're not going to be in that situation. So maybe put him on the bench, but still super risky still. Kilman, on the other hand, again, third playing bench option. Maybe you could go for him. There is a decent chance of a clean sheet there. Kilman, of course, super inexpensive, really cheap. There has been a bit of rotation there, but kind of Wolves have had a few injuries in defence. Particularly, they haven't got a left back at the moment other than Ait Nouri. Maybe Sice plays there, which means maybe Kilman goes to left centre back. Hard to say that Kilman is guaranteed nailed on, but if he is, could actually be a pretty good option to have. And there you have it, guys. 53 players. Can you believe I went through that many players in, I know this video has been kind of long, but short amount of time to be talking about 53 players, even though I haven't gone through all of them in any great detail. But hopefully this was really useful. These are the 53 players I would be considering for our free hit teams. Whatever, if you want to bring in players for game week 18 only, these are the players I would be most looking at, and these are the players that I've got my eye on. After that, ignore them, but perhaps you have a slightly different opinion. Any players you would add to this list? Any players you would take away from this list, perhaps? Really interested to see what you've got in the comments, and I'll try and reply to them, and we'll have a little bit of a chat to see what we all think. Obviously, if you enjoyed this video, please do like the video. I spent a lot of time on this video today, and of course, if you're new around here and you enjoyed what you saw, why not subscribe? Plenty more FPL content to come. We're getting so close to 50,000 subscribers, which I'm so excited about, by the way, guys. But that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching today. If you want to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, support me on Patreon, or join my mini league, please check out the links in the description. And until then, I will see you on the next video. See you later, mates. Bye-bye.